The unbroken thread. The scent of lemon polish and old wood hung in the air, a smell that, for all its chemical tang, was woven into the fabric of Leo's earliest memories. It was the smell of Saturday mornings, of his mother's forearms damp with effort, of sunlight slicing through the living room window onto a floor so clean you could see the ghost of your reflection in the oak. Now, standing in the grand, silent foyer of a house that was not his home, a $5 million contemporary monstrosity of glass and cold steel in the Hamptons, that same scent ambushed him. It didn't belong here, amid the minimalist art and the chill of conditioned air. It was a scent from another universe, a planet of worn linoleum and simmering pots, of laughter crammed into a too-small kitchen. Leo Santoro, 42, had not been Leo Santoro for 15 years. To the financial world, he was Leon Sterling, founder of Sterling Capital, a man who had turned a disruptive algorithm and a ruthless instinct into a fortune that even he sometimes forgot the scale of. He'd shed his name like a snakeskin, believing it carried the dust of struggle, the faint, embarrassing aroma of need. He'd built this new self from polished granite and ambition. He was here at his stepfather, Richard Thorne's, summer house for a tense, obligatory dinner, a quarterly performance review disguised as a family meal. Richard, who had married Leo's mother, Elena, 7 years ago, always made Leo feel like an imposter, a speculative stock that had, against all odds, paid off. He'd arrived early, hoping to steal a quiet moment with his mother before the performance began. The housekeeper, a woman named Marta, had let him in with a quiet nod, her eyes avoiding his. "Your mother is in the east sunroom, Mr. Sterling," she said, the name sounding alien in the vaulted space. But the house felt empty, preternaturally still. He walked on soundless cream carpets, past sculptures that looked like frozen screams. The east sunroom was vacant, the westering sun glinting off empty, polished surfaces. It was the faint, rhythmic squeak that led him, a familiar, protesting sound. He followed it down a back hallway toward the service quarters, the part of the house designed to be invisible. The lemon scent grew stronger, acrid and sharp. He pushed open the swinging door to a large, sterile laundry and utility room, and there he found her. His mother, Elena, was on her knees on the cold tile floor, not in prayer, but in penance. A yellow plastic bucket sat beside her, steam faintly rising. She was scrubbing the base of a massive stainless steel washing machine, her small, strong hands he knew every line and callus of, working a coarse brush in tight, furious circles. Her silver hair, usually pinned back in an elegant twist, had fallen in damp strands around her face. But it was the sound that broke him. Not the squeak of the brush, but a low, choked, rhythmic sob she was trying desperately to swallow. A millionaire found his mother kneeling, cleaning the floor in his stepfather's house, crying. The headline flashed in his mind, cruel and tabloid-ready. But this was no headline. This was the axis on which his world tilted and shattered. The marble floor of his carefully constructed life cracked, and through the fissure rushed every memory he'd tried to pave over. The memory, a 9-year-old Leo kneeling beside her on the linoleum of their apartment, not scrubbing but carefully arranging his toy soldiers along the clean, damp baseboards. She'd laugh, flicking soapy water at him. "You're supposed to be helping mio piccolo generale, not planning an invasion." The smell was of Fabuloso, not lemon, and the radio played tinny old Italian love songs. They were poor, but the floor was theirs. The memory, her knees years later as she knelt in their tiny garden patch behind the duplex, planting tomatoes. "You have to get close to the earth, Leo. You have to feel it." Her hands dark with soil were instruments of creation, not degradation. The memory, the first time Richard came to dinner at their modest home. Leo, then 35 and already successful, saw his mother's nervous pride as she served her legendary lasagna. Richard had praised it, but his eyes had scanned the room, missing nothing: the faded couch, the bargain store curtains. A month later, he'd gifted her a professional-grade cleaning service for her birthday. "So you can finally take a break, Elena." His kindness, a velvet glove around an iron judgment. "Mama?" The word was out before he could stop it, the old, intimate name he hadn't used in years. It felt like a key turning in a rusty lock. Her head jerked up. Her eyes, the warm brown of chestnuts, were red-rimmed, swimming in a pool of hurt so profound it stole his breath. For a second, pure shame flooded her features. She tried to scramble up, wiping her hands on her simple cotton trousers, not the elegant linen outfits Richard bought her. "Leo, Caro, you're early. Marta was feeling unwell. I didn't want the girls to see this area messy." The lie was flimsy, desperate. He crossed the room in 2 strides, ignoring the expensive suede of his loafers on the damp tile. He knelt beside her, the position mirroring his childhood. He took the brush from her hand, its bristles still warm. His fingers closed over hers. They were trembling. "Look at me," he said, his voice thick. "Why?" The dam broke. The story tumbled out in a hushed, anguished torrent. It wasn't about the floor. It was about Richard's offhand comment at breakfast, criticizing the streaky windows in the sunroom. It was about his daughter from his first marriage, Clarissa, who'd visited last week and remarked with a sneer how lived-in the guest cottage looked, the cottage where Elena kept her non-designer things, her non-valuable memories. She'd cleaned their whole lives, but it had been an act of love, of fierce ownership. Here, it was an admission of inadequacy. "I just wanted to do something real," she whispered, a tear tracing the beautiful, deep line from her nose to the corner of her mouth, a line earned from decades of smiling, not from Botox. "I feel like a ghost in my own life, Leo." He pulled her into his arms, right there on the utility room floor. The scent of lemon polish on her skin was now the smell of heartbreak. He saw, with painful clarity, the small kindnesses she'd performed her whole life, the perfectly mended socks, the way she'd always cut his pancakes into bite-sized pieces long after he was old enough, the late-night cups of chamomile when the world felt too big. These were her language of love, a language this house had rendered obsolete. "Get up, Mama," he said, his own vision blurring. "We're leaving." "The dinner?" "To hell with the dinner." He helped her up, fetched her cardigan from a hook. He led her, not to the grand front entrance, but out a side door to his car. He didn't drive to a Michelin-starred restaurant. He drove for 2 hours, back to the city, back to the old neighborhood in Queens that had gentrified around the edges, but kept its soul. He parked outside Gennaro's, the tiny Italian bakery and cafe that had been there since his childhood. The bell jingled, a familiar, tinny song. The air was a thick, warm blanket of baking bread, sugar, and espresso. Old men argued over newspapers. A young mother tried to coax a cannoli bite into a squirming toddler. The linoleum was cracked in places, the formica tables etched with generations of gossip. The owner, Gennaro, now in his 70s and flour-dusted as ever, looked up. His eyes crinkled. "Santo cielo! Elena! Leo!" Like a vision from the old days. He came around the counter, embracing Elena in a cloud of powdered sugar. No formality, no calculation, just genuine joy. They sat at their old table by the window. Leo ordered for them 2 sfogliatelle, 2 dense, bitter espressos. They didn't speak much at first. They just watched the street, the familiar hustle. Elena's shoulders, which had been up around her ears in the Hamptons, slowly descended. She broke the flaky pastry, the ricotta filling sweet and comforting. "You know," she said softly, watching a young boy help his grandfather carry a bag of groceries, "the first time I cleaned for money, I was 16, new in this country. My English was hello and thank you. The lady called my work adequate. I cried on the bus home. Then I went to night school." Leo reached across the table, covering her hand. "You built a world for us with those hands, Mama, a world that mattered." "I think," she said, meeting his eyes, the strength returning to her gaze, "I got lost trying to live in someone else's world. I forgot the grammar of my own." That night, Leo didn't take her back to the sterile penthouse he owned. He took her to his home, a place he'd never really thought of as a home, just a sophisticated shelter. Together, they did something radical. They cooked. They dug out an old recipe for pasta e fagioli, the kind that takes hours. She showed him how to properly dice the celery, the way the garlic should sigh, not scream in the oil. The kitchen grew warm and steamy, fragrant with rosemary and pancetta. They set the small, unused kitchen table with his expensive but lonely-looking china. They ate, and the soup tasted of resilience, of 1,000 shared meals in a noisy, warm kitchen. The next morning, Leo made calls. He canceled his meetings. He drove his mother to the small, well-kept cemetery where his father, a mechanic who died when Leo was 12, was buried. She placed a single perfect tomato from his old garden patch on the grave. She said, "He always said my tomatoes were the best." And finally, her smile reached her eyes. The hopeful thread began to weave itself back through the tapestry. It wasn't about grand gestures or financial rescue. It was in the everyday moments reclaimed. A week later, Leo found himself in his mother's modest apartment in the city, the one she'd kept, a fact for which he was now eternally grateful. She was teaching his niece, his sister's shy 8-year-old daughter, how to roll out pasta dough. Her small hands were white with flour, her tongue poked out in concentration. "See, Kara, you talk to the dough, you tell it stories, then it holds them for you." Leo leaned against the doorway, watching. He saw his mother not as a woman kneeling on a cold floor, but as a queen in her true kingdom, passing on the sacred, unbroken thread. Her resilience was not in never falling, but in always knowing what and who could help her rise. Her belonging was not granted by a house or a man, but forged in these small, warm rooms of connection. That Sunday, he invited his whole family, his sister, his husband, the kids, a few loud and loving aunts and uncles, to his place. He didn't hire a caterer. He and his mother cooked. The table was a chaotic, beautiful jumble of mismatched chairs, kids laughing, stories flying over the clatter of cutlery. The air smelled of garlic, roasting meat, and yes, faintly of lemon polish, because Elena had insisted on giving his kitchen a proper going over before they started, and this time it was an act of love, of ownership. Richard called twice. Elena let it go to voicemail. Later, she would speak to him from a place of newfound strength. That was her battle. Leo's battle was over. He had found his mother, and in doing so, he had found himself again. He was not just a millionaire. He was Elena's son, a man who knew that the truest wealth was not in the portfolio, but in the shared, steaming bowl of soup, in the flour-dusted hands of a child, in the quiet, enduring grammar of kindness spoken between generations, in the simple, profound act of kneeling, not to scrub away your worth, but to plant something new and watch it grow together.